Leave now or you'll be jailed. Israel's ultimatum to more than 40,000 African refugees. The move to expel them prompted thousands to protest in Tel Aviv. So, are the deportations a case of national security or a racist agenda? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Sami Zeidan. Israel has until Monday to provide further details of a controversial plan to expel thousands of African refugees, mostly Eritrean and Sudanese, to a third African country. The Supreme Court set the deadline earlier this month, suspending the deportations meantime. On Saturday, more than 20,000 people took to the streets of Tel Aviv to protest against the mass expulsions. The United Nations has also criticized Israel for its hardline approach. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said the flood of migrants was worse than, quote, attacks by Sinai terrorists. The refugees are being offered $3,500 and a plane ticket to leave the country, or they face being locked up indefinitely.
Find a solution that will take the refugees inside Israel and gives refuge to everyone that needs it.
Israeli government is doing nothing, okay? They took these people in, they throw them out in South Tel Aviv, they don't give them work permits, they don't give them any medical help, any educational help. I think it's a shame. It's a shame.
Let's bring our panel into the show then. We have joining us from Tel Aviv, Monim Haron, an asylum seeker from Sudan, an activist at the African Students Organization in Israel, also a student at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, studying economics and political science. From Jerusalem on Skype, Gil Hoffman, a Knesset insider and chief political correspondent at the Jerusalem Post. Also from Tel Aviv, Asaf Weitzen, a human rights lawyer and one of the petitioners in the historic Supreme Court case challenging Israel's anti-infiltration law. Welcome to you all. If I could start then perhaps with Monim. What happens then, March 26, Monday, the deadline expires for the government to respond to the petitions against deportations. What happens then?
Hi, thank you for having me. So, there's only two choices. Either the asylum seekers has to choose to go to indefinite jail or to be deported to a third country. So, which both of them are very difficult options because no one wanted to go to jail. And the second option is the third country. The problem is with those countries is that they deny to have such an agreement with Israel to receive African asylum seekers. And we already know the consequences of those who have been deported or those who have been chosen to go to those countries. They had to flee again to seek for a safe countries. So
are you personally worried, Monim, about your own fate and what might happen come Monday?
I'm personally not, but as a person who fight for his own people, yes, I'm so worried because there is thousands of Sudanese and Eritrean refugees who could face these two options. And that's really painful for me.
Okay, let's take the question perhaps to Asaf. Is there really no other third alternative? Monim said there that people might be facing on Monday either the choice between a deportation or jail. Is there no chance perhaps that this can end in a different way?
Well, we certainly hope so. Otherwise, there wouldn't be the protest we've seen yesterday and the public outrage against this very bad policy and racist policy. But before the jail and the deportation to the third country, what will happen is that thousands of people will lose their visa. People have to renew their visa every 2 months or 4 months, and now they will not be able to renew the visa because they're supposed to leave to Rwanda, which is so-called the third secret country Israel has agreement with. And if they will refuse to go, because Rwanda is not safe for them, because Rwanda doesn't recognize having any agreement with Israel and not giving them any rights, they may face the loss of their visa, not being able to renew it, and then not being able to work and maintain themselves. And this is sadly another option that is on the table. But we certainly hope, I hope, Munim hope, that we will be able to stop this ridiculous, ignorant, foolish policy.
Well, how do you hope you'll be able to stop it then? Are you putting your faith in public pressure and action, or in the courts intervening to stop this policy?
Everything is connected. We have another option, by the way. If Rwanda will say no, if Rwanda will say we are not accepting people from detention facilities, we refuse to cooperate with policy that hurts our brothers, the African asylum seekers in Israel, this would put an end to this detention and deportation policy. So we beg, we plead to Rwanda not to cooperate with the detention and deportation policy Israel is having. This is one option. The other option is that the public pressure, the international pressure, the international community, and the public pressure here in Israel will make a change, because I think we started to see a shift. We started to see people like Deri, the Minister of Interior, and Netanyahu saying maybe that kids will not be deported at the first stage, and people who came to Israel as minors and grew up in the studying the education system here will not be deported as well. And more groups hopefully are protected for the time being from the deportation. But we'll have to keep pressing. We'll have to put pressure with the international community, with the public opinion, and also with the courts. Yes, because what Israel is doing is against international law. United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees said it loud and clear. This shows this is against international law, because Rwanda is denying having any agreement with Israel, because the agreements are secret, and because people that are shipped from Israel have no safe and legal status in the countries they are shipped to.
All right, I'm going to come back to you in a moment, Asaf, to pose to you the counter opinion to the suggestion that Israel is doing something illegal. But before we do that, perhaps we'll go to Gil, and he might actually do that for us. I want to get your perspective, Gil, on whether you think government policy is starting to change on this issue as a result of some of the public protests and public pressure we've seen.
So first of all, I want to clarify that I'm not a spokesman for the Israeli government, and the producers tried to get a spokesman for the Israeli government to come on the show to offer that perspective, and that won't be here. I'm a political analyst, and yes, the government is checking various different solutions to this problem. No one wants there to be crises, and people hope that the Munin and his friends are going to be okay, but they entered the country illegally. And this country has a responsibility to make sure the people who are citizens and the people who are in this country legally will be employed. They don't have a responsibility to ensure that people who entered the country illegally will be employed and take jobs away from the poor people of this country. So while I'm certainly not a spokesman for the Israeli government, I understand the political realities. Netanyahu represents the Likud party, which is a party that traditionally represents the Israeli underclass. And so while there is pressure, there was a very large rally on Saturday night in Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv is seen as kind of disconnected from the rest of the country in many ways, and not really a place that is the base for the Likud. And the people who the Likud does represent in Tel Aviv are people who've lost their jobs to these migrant workers, or have had their neighborhoods that don't look as good as they used to look because of the migrant workers. So there's so much internal pressure within the Likud party on the politicians on the right to expel these men. And we haven't been talking about children from the very beginning, only about the actual men, migrant workers, not people who are married, not people who lay down roots, that I still think that the bulk of the expulsions will end up happening.
All right, let's take that point back to Asaf. If you look at the statements of some of the government ministers, like the Minister of Education, Naftali Bennett, he says the government will give asylum to refugees and only job seekers are going to be deported. What's the problem with that policy? Defenders of the government might argue. Every government has to take care of its own people and secure its borders.
So there is no problem with that, or maybe the only problem with that is that it's not true. Israel has less than 0.5% of its population as asylum seekers, 37,000 people. The vast majority of them are coming from Sudan and Eritrea, two countries that Israel is not deporting people to their countries of origin because of the situation and the human rights violation and the genocide in Darfur, in the Nuba Mountains, and the dictatorship in Eritrea. So Israel, if they were working migrants, as Netanyahu and Bennett are saying, they could be shipped back to their countries of origin. But the fact that Israel is choosing Rwanda as a third country, as a safe third country, so-called, is the first evidence that we are dealing with refugees and asylum seekers and not with working migrants. The second evidence is the recognition rates around the world. I mean, Eritreans are asking asylum all around the world, and the same is with Sudanese. And the recognition rates are extremely high, over 70% and 80% recognition rate. The recognition rate of asylum seekers in Israel is less than 0.5%. Only 12 people out of 65 people that came here in 2012 and 37,000 that are here today were recognized as refugees. It's less than 0.5% of the 0.5% that is here anyway. And when you look at the world, you see significantly higher recognition rates. So all the liars are coming to Israel and all the genuine refugees are coming to everywhere else. So again, it doesn't make sense, and we should treat the problem as it is. If we were dealing with migrant workers, they would be shipped back to their countries of origin. If we are dealing with refugees and asylum seekers from Eritrea and Sudan, they should get the rights according to the Refugee Convention here. And now, one of the lies is that it's because of economics, because they take jobs for the poor Israelis. But the fact is that most of them are working in jobs that Israelis refuse to do, like cleaning dishes at restaurants and hotels and so on. And even the Israeli government, when it decided to deport them, at the same decision decided to take more people in from the Philippines and other places to compensate for the loss of manpower that they create by the deportation. So even this is a pure and obvious lie.
All right, so a lot of issues to pick up on there. Before we do that, though, can I go back to Munim just to put this into perspective and tell us a little bit about your story. Did you enter the country, quote unquote, as the term, not that we're endorsing it, illegally? Did you flee violence and come as a refugee? Tell us a little bit about what you've gone through to make it to where you are today.
Yes. Oh, thank you. So I will answer this question, and also I wanted to reply to a political analysis from Jerusalem, that he said we entered the country illegally, and the Israeli has to protect his own people and his own borders. I agree with that, but none of these claims are one of the standards of a Geneva Convention. No refugee has to be legally, then you will get protection, because once you are fleeing your country, you are just looking to a safe place, and you are not even thinking to have documents or papers. So I would like to say, like, first of all, my own story. I survived. Like, it was really a miracle that I survived when the Janjaweed militia attacked our village. That time I was 12 years old. This was the first time, just because I was belong to a certain ethnic group in Darfur. After then, when I got accepted to the university, I became to be a political activist against the radical Islamist government in Sudan. And my life was really in danger. Actually, they wanted to arrest me. They arrested many of my friends, including my brother. And that's the reason I fled my country. And
okay,
I
allow me to present to you, Munim, perhaps the opposing argument that some might say, well, you went through a horrible experience, but you were able in the end to be processed through the Israeli system and to stay in the country. Is the system not working? Are we over-exaggerating and hyping up the issue of deportations? If people who do have legitimate reasons to be in the country, like yourself, can be allowed to stay. What do you say to that?
Actually, the claim of the government is that all of us are not refugees and all of us are not asylum seekers. But, like, they even not checking our asylum seekers. I asked, for example, I asked for my asylum seekers 5 years ago and 1 month now. Actually, 5 years and 1 month. I asked for my asylum in 25 of March 2013, and up to date I got no response. And they are not saying even if I'm a refugee or not. So, you know, it's a bit ridiculous to say that no one is an asylum seeker or no one is a refugee once you are not answering their asylum request. So,
okay, let me get the perspective of Gil, who I point out is not a government spokesperson. We know that, Gil, but just to get your perspective, because you do have a slightly different one perhaps than some of the other panelists on the show. Doesn't it come down to this issue of whether the government is just simply labeling too many people as job seekers, regardless of their situation?
So, Sami, Israel's notorious for its bureaucracy, and it's unacceptable. It doesn't only affect migrant workers or asylum seekers, it affects everyone in this country, and we all suffer from it. This is just one example of it. And yes, there's a process where the people are asking to be labeled refugees if they are, and go through the legal procedures, and that's going very slowly. And so these protests, if they have any impact at all, could perhaps have an impact on making sure that that process will be expedited.
But you don't see,
Because
Gil,
anyway,
for example, that there's a particular
people
targeting of people who come from the African continent compared to people of European descent or come from other parts of the world who also may have, shall we say, visa issues. You don't see that there's a particular targeting. I mean, just to give an example, the figures from the UNHCR, according to a November 17th statement, 2017, said, quote, there are some 27,500 Eritreans, 7,800 Sudanese in Israel. And since Israel took over refugee status determination in 2009, only 8 Eritreans and 2 Sudanese have been recognized as refugees by the authorities. The statement went on to remind Israel that it's a party to the 1951 Refugee Convention. Is there not an element of targeting, perhaps, however bad the bureaucracy is? Some people seem to be suffering from it worse than others.
Wow, Sammy, those numbers are terrible, and I myself have asked questions about those numbers to the politicians in order to get answers. And what they've told me is that the numbers with the Georgians and the Ukrainians are quite similar. That you've got 20,000 Georgians and Ukrainians that over the last couple of years have been expelled from this country, and they're as white as snow. So it's not an issue of race, and people who say it's an issue of race are just trying to hurt Israel.
Okay, it's not an issue of race. I'm wondering, Asaf, though, when perhaps government officials, senior religious officials make statements, as the Prime Minister did, comparing or saying that a flood of illegal migrants from Africa was worse than attacks by Sinai terrorists, or the Sephardic chief Rabbi Yitzhak Yosef stoking controversy when he referred to black people as monkeys. Does that add up in the public psyche to create a very different environment for asylum seekers from the African continent?
So I think that in this regard, Israel is similar, sadly similar to other countries. Race is an issue in many countries, and black people have more difficulties than white. And here they have few difficulties, not only being black, but also being non-Jews in a Jewish state, and working with an asylum system that is not functioning on purpose, if you ask me, but definitely not functioning, and everyone can agree on that. So the combination of not being able to ask asylum and get a response in a reasonable time and be recognized as a refugee as any other place in the world, being black, so you can easily identify them and they can be identified, what creates this political tension, because we have triple the amount of African asylum seekers that are just illegal, undocumented working migrants, and that extended their visa and stayed overdue their visa, but nobody's talking about them in the media, and nobody's making a big deal out of it. And yes, the color is an issue here. Also, the Ethiopian Jews are suffering from racism in some issues, and it's well known, and it's sad, but it's a sad truth. So disconnecting it from the race is in my eyes, not in accordance with reality. But the issue here, I think, more than everything else, is that Israel is not following the Refugee Convention and the obligations we took on ourselves. Because we are, I mean, around the world, we have the biggest crisis, the refugee crisis, since the Second World War. 66 million asylum seekers and displaced people. And in Israel, we have less than 37,000 of them, and only 12 now, or 10 a few months ago, were recognized as refugees. It doesn't make sense. And it's not because of bureaucracy. It's because of policy.
Okay, we've got about 4 minutes left, so I want to try and give 2 minutes to each of Gil and Manim. Gil, go ahead. I know you wanted to say something in just a couple of minutes.
Sure. I mean, you brought up extreme things on one side, the extreme on the other side are the people who are at the rally. There was a Holocaust survivor who was comparing what the people have been through, the migrant workers, to the Holocaust. And, that's just an extreme way of getting their point across. And I don't think either side is particularly helpful in persuading the masses when you make these kinds of extreme arguments. I think that it's much more persuasive when you have Munin and people like him explain their side, and then you have people on the other side, like Ethiopian immigrants to this country, who say, I've lost my job because I was only willing to work for minimum wage. I was only willing to work 8-9 hours a day. These are people who are willing to work 16, 17, 18 hours a day for half of minimum wage, and it's just not fair. And point to other countries that have taken much more extreme steps, countries in Europe, Donald Trump and what he's doing, who we definitely don't want to be compared to. In Israel, Brexit, Britain, for a number of reasons, including the refugee issue, is leaving the European Union. And they're taking far more extreme steps. Israel's choosing between peoples and handling the situation the best way possible, as hard as it is.
Okay, the best way possible, Israel is handling the situation. I'm curious to get your take on that, Munim. Do you feel particularly demonized, and some of the people that you speak to, because they come from the African continent or of African descent?
Yes, actually, this is true. But I would like to say, like, we've fled such atrocities like genocide and ethnic cleansing in Sudan, where the government of Sudan is killing innocent civilians without no reasons, just because they are African origins. And for me, I can't compare what Israel is doing and what our government is doing back there. But again, I would like to say, like, Israel is a democratic country, a modern country, and they really can protect us until we will be able to go back to our countries. And I would like to say, like, we saw actually the policies of the government towards us, which are really unfair. And the only hope that we have as African asylum seekers in Israel is the Israeli public, because for me there is a huge difference between the government policies and the Israeli citizens. They are actually non-racist. I mean, the Israeli public, they are amazing people, and the demonstration of yesterday actually proved that there are like thousands of Israelis who support the being of asylum seekers in Israel, who are like supporting to have and clear policies toward asylum seekers. And on the other side, we have the unfair government policies towards us. Because the question is, what's going on in Sudan or Eritrea? Is it a normal? This is the question I ask always, because no one can ignore that what is going on in Darfur or in Nuba Mountain or Blue Nile is a normal situation. There's a genocide going on there. So the Israeli country should give us a right to live, should give us a basic rights of human being or refugees. And I guess they have the ability to do that. Thank you.
All right, it's been a fascinating discussion, but I'm afraid we are winding down now, so it is time to end the show and thank our guests very much for their participation. Munim Haron, Gil Hoffman and Asaf Weitzen. And thank you too for watching. You can see the show again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com, or for further discussion, head over to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on Twitter. Our handle there is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Sami Zeidan, and the whole team here, for now, it's goodbye.